Welcome to RocklandSound, where rock meets Rockland. And I'm in Austin, the music capital of the world, and we are starting to open up and become the musical capital of the world again. Um, we're very honored, and I'm very honored since I'm the one here right now, to have a legendary musician, Glen Burtnik, from many a band, from all the way from Beatlemania to his own music to Styx, and on and on. And we'll get into that. Thank you for being on Rockland Sound.
Yeah, man. Happy to be here, wherever I am.
Yes, in the ether of the internet.
Yeah.
One of the things we do here is a little different than most podcasts. So where you can sit there, of course, there's 8 million of them out there. And they're going to go and hit you with your influences. And of course, we're interested in stuff like that. And promote whatever you have to promote, which we want to do. We here are really more about trying to figure out what made you follow the path that you're on, and deal with the personalities you dealt with, and go from there. So it's really want to hear a little bit about what made Glen Glen.
Wow.
One of the first questions that I asked that's pretty unique to the show is, and we, like I mentioned, obviously you were probably around music before this question happened. But what is that first album that you had to have that you bought with your own money?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not sure I can remember. I'm embarrassed to say the first single I ever bought was "Go Away, Little Girl" by Steve Lawrence.
Oh, I remember him.
But the album, the most memorable one was probably "Axis Bold as Love," the second Jimi Hendrix album,
right?
Which was probably around the same time that I bought the White Album by the Beatles. But yeah, like I'm that old. I grew up in the '60s, and I was very inspired by '60s music. I still am.
Yeah, well, that's obvious. I mean, you steep yourself in a lot of the Beatles stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
From what I've been studying about you, me being from the Jersey area, you grew up in New Jersey, I see.
Yeah.
And I assume you're still there.
I am. Yeah.
You are. Okay. So what kept you staying there? Just the roots.
Well, my parents lived here. And now my daughter and her family lives here. My mom just passed away a couple of months ago, so
Sorry for your loss.
Thanks, but that's a reason. Family is a reason to stay here. It's what you know. It's what you're used to, and it's home. It's although I often ask myself, in the dead of the winter when it's really cold and really really sucks weather-wise, I ask myself, what am I doing here? And you're in Austin, which I'm a little jealous. Yeah. Austin's a very cool place. But now I live in Asbury Park. I'm just a walkway from the beach.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the Atlantic Ocean, which is a really nice thing to live near too.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
I grew up in West Orange, and I think you grew up in Irvington.
I was born in Irvington.
Okay.
Yeah, but for the most part, I grew up in New Brunswick.
New Brunswick, okay.
But I'm New Jersey.
So about 8 years ago, my wife and I moved here. I just kind of saw the way the world was or our country, I should say. And we don't do politics really on the show because everybody bludgeons each other with it, and it brings out the worst in most people.
Yeah, it's bad now, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the reasons we started this was Tom and I'm a musician myself, singer, songwriter, guitar player, whatever. And cool. Tom's a drummer, and cool. We used to play together, and we used Zoom basically during the pandemic to kind of just be able to see each other and communicate instead of just talking on the phone. And one of us just kind of said, really sucks that none of us can go out and play. And but we do have a love for music and a love for artists like you. And we wanted to see if we can help local bands and established bands keep their music out there while this was happening.
Cool.
That's where where the podcast started, and we've been quite successful and have interviewed quite an eclectic group of people. I've got to talk to a few heroes, and it's one of them was Bruce Kulick from Kiss, and the day that I interviewed him was actually the anniversary of my first concert, which was Kiss with him in it.
Oh, that's cool.
It felt like on like 35 years to that day or whatever. Pretty neat opportunity. But
yeah.
My actually first album, and then obviously the audience that follows us knows, I bought Queen the Game.
Great. Now I have that album. I bought it myself, and it's a great one.
Yeah, saved up my lunch money, and my mother used to. My stepfather was part of the Elks. You remember the Elks? The Elks clubs all over.
Sure.
So he would go out on a Friday night, and my mother would let me stay up later than normal and take me roller skating. And it was open to 11, so I was like, "Yeah, I get to stay up." And that was the song that was like number one at the time. So we'd all run out there and boogie down on our roller skates. So I had to go out and get it, and it's quite an eclectic album. So like every album they put out. Now moving on, so after you go, you find the Beatles and Hendrix and everything. What time when did you start to learn an instrument, or what made you want to? Was it a guitar first, or singing to the albums around, or radio?
It's a good question. I always sang. As a child, I sang a lot. I had very important. I had two older brothers, and my older brothers were, they were kind of. I perpetually think of them as teenagers,
right?
Because they're about 10 years older than me. So they. I was very influenced by the music of the baby boomers, which they are more. I'm like the tail end of boomers, but. So I would sing for the family. The family noticed that I loved music all my life. But then when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I was enamored with the drums. And I began drum lessons. My mother was generous enough to hook me up with a local music school. And I studied drums for however long, a couple of years. And then one of my brothers brought home, during that time, he brought home a guitar he borrowed. And that's really how I started to learn guitar. There was a show on the local public broadcasting, NET, Channel 13 here. And it was like, I think the name of it was How to Play Folk Guitar or something. And so it was that show where I learned chords. And, basically as soon as I knew two chords, I started writing songs, like I should say, making up songs. And, I'd sing along and I'd write some dumb words. And eventually I considered myself a songwriter. And but I've been in bands as a drummer. And then later, I became a bass player for a living, and then a lead guitarist for a living, and all kinds of different, varying hats that I have worn. That I've been fortunate enough to make my living as a musician.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when did it start to be more of a get in a band, or just meet a neighbor or whatever it was and start maybe hanging out in the garage or doing what you do like we all
Well, I think technically I was playing drums before most guys my age were into instruments, but through my music school, they hooked me up with these three older brothers. They were older than me, and one played trumpet, one played accordion, and the other played clarinet, and they were
Oh wow.
the Nosachinsky brothers was their name, and we played. We rehearsed, we
Mhm.
learned some songs, and we played like little backyard party kind of things, and that was my first experience. And then like it didn't take long. A few years later, my friends were taking guitar lessons, and I was in a band called the Creeping Fungus Blues Band, and we played blues. We thought we were bluesmen. Of course, we were 13, 14-year-old kids that were imitating white Anglo-Saxon British guys who were imitating black Southern bluesmen.
Like
So,
old Fleetwood
but
Mac type stuff, you mean? Like that?
yeah, John Mayall, yeah, kind of.
Mhm.
But we thought we were a blues band, but we did our best, and I learned a lot. So I was drummer with that, and then as time went on, my songwriting got more and more serious, and I was singing songs, and then I got a hold of a tape recorder. I started recording songs, and and then I kind of became accidentally, I guess, maybe a guitar player because I was just writing songs, and I was to be I'll let you know a little secret. I was never great, but I was good enough to. I've always been just good enough, and and I've managed to eke. Like I said, I've managed to eke out a career.
Yeah, you have a quite successful one.
Yeah,
You
pretty
know.
good. I mean, it is a huge thing that I've managed to never look back and make a living. I've raised my kids, and I I pay for my house. I don't, I'm
Mhm.
not in the poorhouse. I'm not in jail, so I'm doing all right.
Hey, you know
Yeah.
that's a successful way to look at it. Obviously, I inherited five stepkids from 8 to 18 when I met my wife,
Uh-huh.
and I had an 8-year-old boy, so three boys, three girls, and that they're all grown on their own now. I'm actually my youngest married, and her my son-in-law is on the USS Harry Truman,
Wow.
the Navy, and they're having a baby girl, so that's four grandkids, and I'm just about to hit 50. But
That's young.
yeah, but well, my wife got married right out of high school. Um, she was in a relationship in high school, and they went for the marriage thing,
Yeah.
And then when that didn't work out, I came popping in there and took over for the rest of the. But
Cool.
when you get that far and none of the kids are in jail or been in any sort of calamity serious, you can give yourself a little pat on the back there. You know.
Absolutely.
So I wake up every morning and go because my son was the pain in the butt, just like me. Yeah. So,
There's lots of ways to mess up your life, and it sounds like you haven't, and I haven't.
so I gave it a good whirl. I, speaking of my wife, she's the one that said, "You play any of those games, you won't have me." And I made a nice choice there. And
Yeah.
we're going on like 13 years.
Excellent.
We get through the 13, the bad number 13 there, right? But it used to be lucky number. So
Uh,
now, what area when you started to focus more on the guitar? What uh year, like what area of years are we in? This decade wise? Are we in the
oh,
60s, like or still in the 60s?
no, still in the 60s. Yeah, I mean, Creeping Fungus Blues Band was probably 68,
Okay.
but by that time I was already deep into Bob Dylan and singer-songwriters, and I think James Taylor came out in around 1970. So singer-songwriters became like a big money-making thing and popular thing, I should say, and so by 70, 71, I was writing my own music. graduated from high school in 73. By 76, I was on the road with a show band.
Okay.
And, and I just kept, by the end of the 70s, I was on Broadway in the Broadway show Beatlemania. And and after that, I was in a band with Jan Hammer, who was from the Mahavishnu Orchestra. So so by the end of in that 10-year period, I actually I jumped from being a middle school student to making records with a hero of mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did some eclectic albums on the side with Neil Sean, I think.
Oh yeah, and I'm on at least one of those, I think.
Are you? Oh, wow, that's cool. Now in the Beatlemania, are you one of the original members of the Beatlemania?
No,
No, because I know there was I know he wrote songs with Kiss, which was Mitch Weissman was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Mitch was. He appeared on. I think he appeared on all the Kiss solo albums, if I'm not mistaken, or a couple of them. But yeah, Mitch. He was the original Paul.
Yeah.
And then the show was a hit, and then they required other groups. So that not only was there there were two casts in New York City, and then they started a show in Chicago. There were two casts for that show, and then they started a third show in L.A., and there were two casts for that. So there's six Beatlemania casts: 6 Pauls, 6 Georges, 6 Ringos, 6 Johns. So
funny story if you never heard it.
Okay.
You're talking about Mitch Weissman being on the solo albums of Kiss.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear the story about Gene on his solo album, what he tried to do?
No.
With the Beatles?
No.
He got all 4 Beatles to say basically yes to playing on his album.
Ah.
So his brilliant idea in his big, bold Gene way was to get them and have them all come in at different times and sing on a track. And he would be able to come out and say Gene Simmons reunited the Beatles. Except they talked to each other. They were actually still friendly, some of them. So one of them's like, I'm going to go in with that guy that wears the makeup. He's like, yeah, me too. And they were like, no, I don't think so. So he used the Beatlemania guys.
Funny. That's funny.
But he got close. He got like 2 or 3 of them to say yes until two of them had a conversation.
That was rather sneaky of him, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, So now, all right, so the Beatlemania, you're doing that. And then how long did you do that for?
Just a couple of years.
A couple of years?
Yeah. After a while, I really didn't like it. It was it's more Broadway. It was more Broadway than rock and roll. There was sort of a script, and and I wanted to be more. I want to express myself and play my own music. So I of course thought I was great, and so I left. I left the show pretty early, and I kept busy for the rest of my life.
Yes. So, but where'd you go right after the Beatlemania?
That's when I joined Jan Hammer's band.
Oh, Jan. Okay. So, how long did you play with him?
Not long. Maybe I was in that band for one album, one tour.
Mm-hmm.
I got involved with another band called Helmet Boy, but and then, as you said, when Jan made an album with Neil Schon, they needed a single. So Jan called me, and the three of us sat down and wrote a song called No More Lies. I played bass on it. I did a little bit of singing, and I wrote the words and a lot. It was a 3-way composition collaboration, and so that was my first. It got a certain amount of airplay and a certain amount of MTV play, and that was my first. My first taste of professional songwriting, where I actually got paid for writing music. So that was a big thing for me.
So now
Yeah.
that has to be into that early '80s area.
Yes.
Because I remember the video. So and MTV was came out in like what 81 or so, 80,
Yeah.
81. So okay. So now from there, I mean, you got a few years and then you end up at Sticks. So I want to get what you did in between
Right.
before we get there because I have a lot to say about Edge of the Century.
Oh,
Um,
well, so after No More Lies, gosh, what was I doing? I actually went back into joining. There was a cover band down here in Asbury Park called Cats on a Smooth Surface,
mhm.
and this was a band that played at least every Sunday night at the Stone Pony in Asbury Park, and Bruce Springsteen started coming around and jamming with us on Sunday nights, and we had a good time, and after that, I put a band together called Manville, and I was signed to A&M Records, but I decided not to call it Manville and just call it Glen Burtnik. So it was a solo album. I made 2 solo albums on A&M Records. One of them was had the song. Well, there was one that had a song called Little Red House, which got a little bit of airplay, and then another song called Follow You, which did a little bit better. I charted, and then I was dropped because I just wasn't making A&M enough money. I just wasn't the big shot that we all hoped I would be. So then,
Let me ask you a question first.
sure.
So when you go back to playing at the Pony and all that, was that the band that because in doing some research that you were playing with La Bamba?
No,
Or
actually, no. After Cats on a Smooth Surface, I joined Richie LaBamba's band called La Bamba and the Hubcaps.
yes,
Very good. You know more than me. And yeah, so that was. It's the same kind of band in the same era, although La Bamba and the Hubcaps have those fabulous horn players.
yes,
Richie LaBamba, Mark Pender, Tony Palagrossi, Ed Mannion. Just lots of wonderful brass players that I don't, and I hadn't. Well, no, I had played with brass players before, but that was a particularly great band. And
yeah. My friend and I kind of know Richie LaBamba a little bit from just being down at the Stone Pony all the time. My friend was a huge Springsteen fan, and he and I followed Southside Johnny the whole summer. Every show they did that was in the area the whole summer.
wow,
They
okay,
basically got to know. Like we'd walk in and they were like, "There you go. Hey, let's go have a beer. Sit down with Bobby Bandier or whoever."
sure.
And we got a couple. He used to sneak the tape player and bootleg the shows. And since there's YouTube now, I don't think it matters. But we got a show where Southside was playing and Springsteen came out and John Bon Jovi, and they
Ah,
played for like 3 hours, and he has it on tape.
nice.
Yeah, he got that on a nice October evening. And I think real bummed. Didn't he have the Corvette? I mean, no, the convertible. Was that?
Bruce with the T-Bird.
No. I think La Bamba had it.
Oh, really?
I,
I don't remember that.
yeah, it might not have been
Ah.
his, but I know he was always in it.
I remember Bruce, and I think Bruce had a T-Bird, an early T-Bird. But yeah, I don't remember La Bamba's car. Maybe he had a really cool car, and I
We'd
missed
hang
it.
out outside the Southside shows when he would be part of the horn, um,
Sure.
the horn players of that particular show, and
Yeah.
he would drive up and down the strip, the boardwalk, like outside that main strip there,
That's
and
great.
and everybody yelling his name while he's driving by. Good old
Great.
memories.
Nice.
All right, so Manville goes to Glen Burtnik. You get dropped, and and we're unfortunate about that. And then
Well, then my phone rings, and it's Dennis DeYoung.
which is the A&M connection, right? Because they were on the A&M.
Yeah, that's how they knew who I was. Although I put out these records that didn't really fly, didn't really make me a superstar, they were pretty well respected records, and I was liked by a lot of people. I fooled a lot of people into thinking I was a cool guy, and so now Styx had broken up about
You're
6
very
years.
humble.
Yeah, oh my God, I'm the most humble man in the world. Anyway, so the they were the Styx was planning a reunion. If I'm not mistaken, well, they had broken up, and then Tommy had called everybody, Tommy Shaw, and said, "Let's get back together. There's money to be made. Let's get back together."
No, I think
So
you're jumping ahead.
no, I'm not. So they start negotiating
Oh, okay.
to have a reunion, and then when it's time to get it together, okay, you guys ready? Tommy's like, I'm busy with a new band called Damn Yankees with Jack Blades from Night Ranger and Ted Nugent. So yeah, and the rest of Styx was like, well, what are you talking about? So they needed somebody in Tommy's gig. Mm-hmm. So they called me. They didn't want to wait. They were ready. A&M Records was ready to put out a new Styx record. And so, because I had this A&M connection, I said, yeah, cool. All right. So then I was in Tommy's place. So I was playing guitar, writing songs, singing my songs. I wrote a song called Edge of the Century, mm-hmm. which became the title track off the Styx album, the first Styx album I was on. And I guess that's it. We did an album. We did a tour, and I called it "Making Believe I'm a Rock Star" because it was the first time I was playing in front of tens of thousands of people. For the most part, singing songs that I had nothing to do with, but even lead singing the songs because I was singing Tommy's songs. Mm-hmm. So that was my gig for a while.
Well, it is in my phone right here, and I am a huge Styx fan, and it is my favorite Styx album.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Well, check that out.
Be right there, if you can see that. I don't know if you can.
I can't, but I believe you.
And
that's Dennis. Dennis was really the producer of that album. So
I already did that a lot on the older albums as well. Was very much into directing it and
yeah. Dennis he's got a lot of firm ideas, and and he was the leader. It certainly seemed to me that Dennis was not going to give up anything. Mm-hmm. He was a leader, and to be fair, he wrote the biggest hits of the band. So, he was leader while I was there, mm-hmm. At least while I was there for that time. Then Tommy came back, and they recorded another record. I was out.
Well, let me ask you a question real quick.
Sure.
Because in doing this, and I had seen them before. I went back. There was actually some really good, I wouldn't say good quality, but there's decent quality videos of you with Styx live. Hmm. And so I was watching them. And so what was the tour like, real quick? Were you packaged with another band, or was it Styx headlining, or what was the shape of of where that went? Because I know Show Me the Way was definitely a big hit.
Big hit. We were headlining for sure. Okay. Like it was only 6 years or so after Kilroy was here with Mr. Roboto, huge hit.
Right.
So we were headlining fairly large, but not huge. We did a few stadiums, but not as many as they wanted. We did a lot of sheds, outdoor amphitheaters, and it was a successful tour, I'm sure. But I think it also pointed out that I think some people were disappointed. They come to see it, and they didn't see Tommy Shaw up there. So and
Yeah, but you did a great job on those songs.
well,
So
thanks.
it's not like they were lacking anything as far as quality.
Thanks. The the Styx contract with the record company A&M was up after that album, Edge of the Century, and so I love telling this story that so Dennis had an attorney who wrote a book called How to Make It in the Music Business. And he was a big attorney. And for a number of reasons, Styx, A&M dropped Styx.
Wow.
And I think all thoughts are it was the attorney's fault. So this is what so that's the greatest indication about how true books with titles like How to Make It in the Music Business, how ineffective guys like that can be. Because here was Styx, a maybe 4 multi-platinum albums in a row, made a lot of money for a record label. And in walks a guy who tells everybody how to make it in the music business, and he loses. He negotiates Styx right off the label. So that was interesting. That was
reissue the book with Dennis doing the foreword.
I'll do the foreword, man. For free, But yeah, so that was funny. That's just like one of the many ironies of my existence, my career. Yeah, so Tommy came back, and then they had a couple of successful tours, and then the original bass player, Chuck Panozzo. First of all, John, his twin brother, the drummer, he passed away, and then Chuck got ill. He became ill, and they needed a bass player, and so JY, James Young, really sweet guy, calls me and says, "Do you know how to play bass? Because we're putting the band back together with Tommy, but Chuck can't do it, and Dennis says he's sick, and we're not sure we believe him or not." So that, and I was like, sure, I want a job. I'm a musician. I'm a working musician. I'll take work.
Yep.
Because that's kind of what I like for those years when I was out of Styx, in between, after Styx, I was recording background vocals on Celine Dion records. I was doing commercials, television and radio commercials for different products. There's a big song by Celine Dion. They still use it, called "It's All Coming Back to Me Now" by Jim Steinman. I'm one of the choir back there singing. So I was just like a working musician, which is what I've actually become in my life by that point. And so when I was asked to play bass, I'm like, yeah, I play bass all the time. I played it in Beatlemania, and I would love to. So there was one show with Dennis and Tommy and JY and the new drummer, Todd Zuckerman, where we were on the Children's Miracle Network. And that was the one and only time I did a show with Dennis and Tommy in the band.
Oh, wow.
Immediately after that, we went on the road with a guy named Lawrence Gowan on keyboards, who has remained in the keyboard seat. He's a great
bunch of times.
Yeah, he's a great singer, great keyboardist, great songwriter. And so he was a pretty good fit. I mean, if you're predominantly a Dennis DeYoung fan, you're always going to miss Dennis's voice, because it's, there's only one. You can tell the second you hear that voice on the radio, you know who it is.
Right.
And for the most part, people associate that voice with Styx. But but so I was in the band for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years as bass player. So I wore two hats in that band. One as the replacement for Tommy Shaw, and one as the sub for Chuck Panozzo.
Now,
And
I have maybe a silly question. Now, knowing that those guys have a pretty good sense of humor from what I've seen and heard about them in interviews and things, was there any sort of running joke in the band about you two, you and Tommy? Like just because you replaced them, and
no, I got along great with Tommy.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
in a positive way.
Yeah. I don't really recall there being jokes about it. I think that
I worded it right. If there was just some sort of kind of like humor involved, like
No, it was fun. It was fun. We enjoyed playing with each other, and
good.
it did become a very exciting band, which I'm sure they continue to be to this day.
Mhm.
I put as much muscle into that act as I could. I always did, and they really stepped it up a notch, and and they've been on the road ever since. I mean, they work like crazy. I left after a while, but they're a money-making band
Mhm.
without Dennis DeYoung.
Yeah.
I don't think they've really had many hit records. I know. So we made another record. My second studio album with Styx is called Cyclorama.
Yep.
And,
Great album.
and yeah, thanks. I liked it. You liked it, but it wasn't a hit record. So, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
Well, let me ask one question quick, and then you can go into it. That not from your end that I noticed, but I would say from like the JY and Tommy side, there seemed to be some sort of anger directed at Dennis on that album, if unless I'm wrong. But I felt it on there.
Yeah.
And obviously you went on to play with Dennis after that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't feel it from you.
There was a lawsuit.
Oh.
This was a divorce of sorts,
Mm-hmm.
and so it wasn't a happy parting.
Mm-hmm. That's obvious.
Yeah, and and there probably was. So, I mean, I wrote a song called "Killing the Thing That You Love."
Great song.
Well, thanks, and it had absolutely nothing to do with Dennis DeYoung. However, people interpreted that. I think even members of Styx interpreted it to possibly be about Dennis, but I wrote it before there was any problem in the band, between Dennis and the others. So I think that everybody looked at that album that way. But yes, it was brutal because there were people lined up. It's kind of like today's politics. There were people on one side saying, this band isn't good anymore. We just like Dennis. And there were people on the other side saying, this band is better without Dennis because we got Tommy, and what can you do? I kind of got involved in that silliness, and and then I kind of matured a little and realized that it's ridiculous. I have nothing to do with this divorce, and I should just keep my mouth shut and wish the best for everyone, which is the way I felt.
Well, the tragedy in all these stories like that these are people that did enjoy each other's company at one point, and created some of the best rock songs out there ever. And they can't even sit in a room together and have a beer or just talk. And I mean, it's an old story.
There's a lot of that.
I have that and I've never even hit the level of success as you. I've had moments where I've felt successful, but I'm not living off music. I'm still striving, but but I've had that with bandmates at a local level where we were buddies and don't talk.
Yeah, no, bands are difficult, especially as you get older, and even worse when you're successful.
Hmm.
Um, if it's a band that makes a lot of the more money, the more success, the more people don't like start to annoy each other, and the longer together, like I have heard stories about, major acts, multi-platinum acts that are still touring, that they don't talk. They walk out on stage from different dressing rooms, and that's the first moment of the day that they see each other.
Yep.
Is on stage, and they play their hits together, and at the end of the show they each jump in their own car, bus, or whatever, and the less they hang out, the happier they are. And
apparently that's how like the Eagles are.
yeah, I think it's a lot of bands, and a lot of big bands. So it's almost unnatural to have a band to work that many years. I mean, it really is, like I call it a divorce, and it really is. I think that it's tough for adults, for grown-ups with their own lives, their own wives. Wives become an issue,
Mm-hmm.
but they have their own lives and their own wives, and their own friends, and their own posse, and everybody's got a posse telling them, "You're the most important guy in this band,
Mm-hmm.
and those other guys, they'd be nowhere without you." So everybody's ego, and plus, you walk off stage and there's like 10,000 people screaming for you at the end of every show for a successful band, and you really start to believe your own hype. And I think that's a very common situation, and I think that's what happened to Styx, along with everybody else.
There's a funny interview I watched with Tico Torres, the drummer of Bon Jovi.
Yeah,
and he said that when they first went out on the road, they did like their real first big tour. I think they were out there 14 months, and he said we were all living at home except for he had a house. He was married with a house and
right.
and a wife. She left because he was gone for so long.
Yeah,
So he lost the house. So but he had the money to build a new house.
yeah.
And he built the house, and then he realized about 3 weeks after he lived in it that his bedroom looked like a hotel room. That he designed it with 2 beds in it, the phone in the middle. And he's like, because that's what he was comfortable in doing,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So, but so then after Sticks, now you had that. Now, how long did where did that go into? So that had to go into the early 90s, I would assume, or right around, yeah.
No. Well, it started in '99.
99, yeah,
I
later.
became their bass player in '99,
Yeah, okay.
and '91 was when we released Edge of the Century.
Right.
99. So I started that decade
Mhm.
as the guitar player for Styx, and I ended that decade as the bass player for
Right,
Styx.
okay.
And then around 2004, 2003 or 4, I left the band.
And that's when Cyclorama came out.
After Cyclorama, and it's kind of, you just kind of touched on what was happening. My marriage was falling apart. I had 3 kids at home. My marriage is falling apart in part, a great deal in part, because I was on the road a lot, and so I decided I'm going to save my marriage.
Mm.
So I'm going to quit the band. I'm going to quit this lucrative act that I play bass for, and come home and make it work. I was wrong. I didn't make it work. It didn't last, but I gave it my best,
And there's the bass behind you chuckling.
Right.
Well, that's how, look, I mean, even with my situation, I was married before my wife now. And one of the things that I dated my ex-wife for like 3 years, and it was perfect. And then I was playing in bands, and we were pretty popular locally. And this day after we got married, I got the Jake from State Farm lady. What's he wearing? Cat. Like completely everything I did was like some insecurity thing. And she knew, like, my guitar player was the type of guy that he would have some beers, And when he got drunk, he'd call you up at 1 o'clock in the morning and be like, "I love you, man." And then she'd be like, "Who are you on the phone with?" I'm like, it's Chris, because you've answered the phone a million times. And and all of a sudden now it's some threat to, so whatever people have in their heads are weird. My wife right now is like, "Go do what you want to do. You just ain't coming back here." She doesn't even have to argue with you. She just looks at you. Italian girl from New Jersey says, "Dad, you could do whatever you want. You're a grown man. You just ain't gonna come back here." And I'm like, "Nope, they ain't gonna argue that one."
Yeah.
So, well, you have a pretty lengthy career here that we're delving into, and quite an interesting one too. But you also wrote a massive song for Don Henley and Patti Smythe. Was that intentional to write it for them, or was that a song you had written that they, somebody found and or recommended?
No, I before I joined Styx, I was writing songs for other people, and Patti Smythe's manager was aware of my Heroes and Zeros album and asked Patti to try writing songs with me. So Patti and I sat down and we wrote together Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough. And
that one right.
and I this might be the first time in your podcast that anybody feeds cats, but I'm going to do that to make history here. Come on, guys.
You know who Matt Pinfield is?
Very well, yeah.
Okay. Well, his cat vomited during ours.
Nice.
Yes.
All right. Well, so that's what I'm doing right now. You can, I'll try to spare you the ugly details here. But anyway, so I wrote this song with Patti, but every time she got to the chorus, there's a danger in loving somebody too much. Well, I would sing a harmony with her. Danger in loving somebody too much. So, here, Jack, you want to say hello? There's Jack the cat. There's one of them.
How you doing, Jack?
And
here because you have headphones on. I said hi to him anyway.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he's a little offended that you didn't say anything.
My mother raised me right, so I tried to reach out.
Nice.
Yes.
So I always harmonized with her in that song, and she showed that song to her friend Don Henley. Now she had recorded, if you listen to Sunset Grill and a number of other Don Henley songs, you can hear Patti clear as day. So they were friends, and Patti showed Don this song that we had written together, that she and I had written, and he learned my part. He learned my harmony, and so that
not a bad honor there.
No, he's great, and I really Patti will hate that I say this, but I don't know that the song would have been as successful had it not had Don Henley's stamp of approval on it. Don, at that point, Don was on top of the world. This was after End of the Innocents, and he was just a big shot. So it was a big duet, and it was my first #1 hit.
I have sang that song times at karaoke.
Really?
And made to sing it, and that is a pain in the ass to sing.
It's kind of high.
I happen to have a quite high voice.
Oh, good.
And that to stay in the key there, especially when you get the quality of karaoke, the sound, the soundtrack to the karaoke, or the bed to the karaoke. It's you got to really use your. I think I've learned more singing at karaoke than I have playing in bands sometimes. And I happen to have a naturally low voice, but it goes up pretty high. So I've enjoyed singing it. It's a really good song. That song is one of those songs that you almost like you loved it, and then at one point you wanted to go like, no, no more, please. After like and then you hear it again a little bit later after it fades out a little bit, and then you're like, that's a great song. It's a classic. So you guys got that one. Funny.
Well, thanks. I'm glad it worked, and and it made me money, and it continues to make some money. I experienced more and more mailbox money, we call it, when you go out to your mailbox and you hadn't been expecting, but boom, there's a check, and you never know how much you're going to get, but sometimes there are really great surprises in the mailbox, and sometimes there's very little. It's just something that you go through as a musician. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
Well, I worked in a pharmacy in Denville that had been there for a million years, and the head pharmacist, his son, managed Maroon 5.
Wow!
Like the Garage, right?
Right.
So they had that huge first album where they sold millions and millions of albums. So he would call in and be like, "I got like a $3,000 check," and then like 3 months later, for every quarter or whatever it was, he's like, "I got an $80,000 check."
Yeah.
And then he was like, "I got a $3 million check."
Good for
then
him.
they played sold out the PNC, and he got to go down and bring his father with him to the show, and he was like, they're all dating the girls from the videos and everything, and he was like, "Yeah, you did right, you did good." So I understand that you want to open that envelope sometimes, and is there any times that you're like you sit there and it's quiet for a little while, and then you really do get a big one?
Yes. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride. I mean, unless you're Bon Jovi or Taylor Swift or somebody, you really don't know where each project is going to go. I mean, and even those guys, I'm sure that Taylor Swift's albums don't all sell the same amount, and Bon Jovi's albums don't all go through the roof either. So and I'm I'm not comparing myself to them, but there are times of feast and there are times of famine, and I've learned to accept that, and I've always made it through, and and I do my best to just enjoy the good and embrace what's working.
Yeah, hey, I mean that's all you can be. I think having a positive attitude is key to success in some ways. Obviously, being negative all the time is just going to surround you with something and make you lose your focus.
Yeah.
What one thing? How about your thoughts on like the streaming services out there? And the other day when I messaged you, you were busy because you were going to go on Sirius XM, which I listen to constantly. And when I'm not using the playlist that I make for myself, excuse me. As far as being reimbursed or paid for
royalties,
royalties on through those services, I never hear any real good stuff so far.
Yeah. I don't know that artists. I don't know an artist that's happy about it, but the entire industry, like almost every other industry, has been turned upside down and changed forever by the internet. And musicians don't make money the same exact way as they used to. At least recordings, there was a sweet spot, and making records. And A&M Records gave me over $100,000 to make each record.
Nice.
And they spent like that much for each video. Crazy money. And that's probably why I didn't last on A&M. because I just didn't make that money back, and that's the way it used to be. Record labels would spend that kind of money.
Yeah.
Whereas now, there's not really a lot of calling for a record label to spend that much money because there's not that much money coming back from album sales.
But isn't there like a positive saying? Now I don't know. Obviously, your house looks nice there. I don't know if you have your own home studio, but I mean, you could put out a record on your own terms right now.
Yes,
Even if you sell less, it's all the money's to you.
that's true.
So I mean, there's that way to look at it as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's good and bad because of the internet. I mean, here we are, we're having a conversation, and this just was unthinkable 20 years ago. So yeah, so part of the problem really is that those of us who have been around um, remember and were trained by the way it used to be, the way music used to be. It's like, yeah, I'll put out records and I'll have fans and I'll make millions of dollars. Well, some people are lucky enough to do that, but for the most part, again, streaming is great. I, in fact, I'm having a hard time now that iTunes is out. Like now, they're called music, and I'm struggling to buy tracks. I just go on YouTube or Spotify or something, and I want to hear this song, and it plays. So I'm not paying for that song, and I just get to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
So they've, the internet has kind of made music free, where it didn't used to be. But that's the era that we are living in, and it was nice back when you could get paid for your music.
True. Now let's lead up to now because I want to take all day on you. Where are we now, and what are we promoting and working on? And let everybody know what do you want them to know as far as keeping an eye on Glenn.
Wow. Well, I'm in 5 bands, I think, right now. There's a band called The Weaklings, which we play a lot of Beatle music, but we also put out albums of our own music on Gem Records. Believe it or not, we have a record deal, and we put out record. What?
Real quick, do me a favor. You have my email through the Zoom. If you
Yeah.
want to send me any sort of links to any of this,
Okay.
I can include them below or whatever for you.
Okay.
When we put I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. So the Weaklings put out original records. We have a live album coming out soon, and we've recorded 3 studio albums. There's a band called The Orchestra, which is basically, it's kind of similar to Styx in that Jeff Lynne broke up ELO. He decided against it. The original members of ELO got back together and said, well, he doesn't want to tour, but we want to tour. They called themselves ELO Part 2. They were together for over 20 years. And then Jeff decided he wanted his name back. So he took him to court, and they changed their name to The Orchestra. Their original bass player, Kelly Grokut, he was the original ELO guy. He suddenly passed away, and I took his place.
Okay.
So, and I've been in that band for over 10 years now. We tour the world. I've played, Eastern Europe, Russia, South America, all over the place. It's really great and great music. So I do that. So let's see, that's band number 2. Number 3, I have a big show, Glen Burtnik's Summer of Love concert. And we are this summer, July through August, every Friday and Sunday, we have a residency at a big, new, beautiful casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey called The Ocean.
Okay.
And so that's a really happening show with about 20 people on stage, all celebrating the music of the Woodstock generation, which is the
Mhm.
stuff I grew up on and that I love. I perform at Beatle conventions.
Oh wow.
Uh, there are at least two. There's probably lots, but there's one called the Fest for Beatles fans, and I'm in the house band there called Liverpool. That happens at least twice a year, and there's also another really big fest called Abbey Road on the River, which takes place
Oh wow.
in Kentucky, just across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. And the so I do that with the orchestra or the Weaklings. And then, and I'm also in Max Weinberg has a band called Max Weinberg's Jukebox. And I play with Max, and we play all over the States and sometimes Europe. And that's a really fun band too. So I think that's five. And if I left something out, well, and here's the other thing. I'm currently recording new music of my own,
Good.
written by me, and I'm performing all the instruments on it. I'm like the one man, I'm like Emmett Rhodes or early Paul McCartney or something. Not as good, but I'm playing the drums, which was, as you know, my first instrument, and playing all the other instruments and doing all the vocals and doing all the writing. And that's a really fun thing. So that's another hat. So that's kind of six projects that I'm into right now.
Just a question, because you mentioned McCartney play, because he plays all the instruments on some stuff. Did you hear his McCartney 3?
Everybody's asking me about that, and I should
like
have. Yeah, I've been hearing good things about it, but I'm really embarrassed to say I haven't. I haven't heard it. I better listen to it.
You're a fan of the other stuff.
Yeah, good. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's good. So
Yeah.
he's still got an edge to him.
Cool. That's great.
It still sounds modern, even though he's been around that long. So I think that's pretty unique.
Yeah, he kind of invented it, didn't he? Or he was one of the inventors of the music explosion that we're living in the aftershocks of.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you for being here and taking the time and being patient with the little glitch with the storm going on. We've had a rough, I guess, about a month of the crazy weather here. One day it's beautiful and 90, and the next day you're running in your house because lightning bolts are all around.
Crazy, right? Yeah.
You were speaking of early on in the interview that tagged my way out of this, is that you were talking about you hate New Jersey sometimes when it gets cold.
Yeah.
Well, we got the Texas blizzard this year and had to live through that.
Wow.
Wouldn't have been a blizzard if it was New Jersey, but in Texas they don't know how to deal with it. And 3 days with no power.
Wow.
Like -3 degrees out. So yeah, it was not fun. But
wow.
I appreciate your time and wish you well. And when the albums or anything else you want to promote comes out, maybe we can have you back, and Tom will be here.
I'd love that. Thanks so much.
We'll give you an award.
Cool.
All right. Have a great night.
All right, brother. You take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, man.